Good afternoon, or I guess almost evening, everybody. Uh, Thanks for checking this out. I wanted to, just like the title and description say, just wanted to go over some basic effects and how they work with the saxophone. A lot of people are interested in adding this to their kind of uh, sound to change it up a little bit and do some interesting stuff. So I wanted to give you kind of a preview, definitely more of an overview than an in-depth um, analysis or description of some of these effects. There are definitely just hundreds and hundreds, I would say probably thousands of effects pedals out there. They're usually made for guitar and they can just do an insane number of things. And some of them can get pretty radical, just completely replacing the sound of the saxophone. Some of them can make pretty small edits to the way a saxophone sounds. So I'm going to grab my horn here and go through the effects that are on this multi-effects pedal. This is a Digitech RP255, and it's over a decade old, but it has the foundational effects that are going to show you what's possible, and then you can kind of decide which one of those you like, which of those you don't like, and you can get more, you can tailor those more to something you might like. I'll show you what I mean. You'll see what I mean. So let me grab my horn. I'm gonna play it with no effects on, so you can just hear my sound. Okay, so that's with nothing affecting. I know the pedal says chorus right now, but that actually shouldn't be on. Right? I should have listened through my headphones to make sure that didn't happen. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna play again. Okay, that time was definitely with no effects. So I do want to clarify. I am playing through a clip-on mic. Um, it's a Shure Beta 98H. The H just stands for horn because um, it's set up to clip onto the bell of a horn. It's a really great microphone. It's small. It comes with a kind of a belt clip, or some kind of clip pack that is wireless, and that is the most important part of it. It sounds really great. It sounds pretty close to the original sound. It loses a little bit of the body, like a little bit of the depth, but when I'm playing on a stage where I'm going to use this mic, um, usually it's with other loud instruments, and you really wouldn't catch the deep nuances of the saxophone anyway. This would be like funk bands, rock bands, even if it's a jazz group, still, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it kind of covers up the depth of the saxophone sometimes. So I'm not too worried about those having a super nuanced sound, and this microphone just does a fantastic job. Okay, so let's get into some effects. Well, chorus is what's showing there. Actually, it looks like that might be, looks like my video has paused itself. Let's get that restarted. And what I'm going to do is go through each of the effects that are available on here and kind of preview them with you. And I'll change the parameters around so that you can get a really, so hopefully I can lead you to getting a good sense of what each kind of effect will do. All right, here we go. I've got it back now. That's good. Having some technical difficulties here. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my camera. I may have to start this whole thing over. We'll see. I'll give it another second. And we'll see how it goes. All right, I've got it, and the preview is working, so let's open it back up here. There we go. Now you can see what I see. All right, so it's a little bit different from the way it looked, but I can fix that. Let's go over a little bit. There we go. So I got the important stuff in the middle there. So you can see the FX are off, and so now what I want to show you. Sorry about that. Let's start with, well, let's start at the top of this pedal. The main, this pedal has a lot of features that I don't use, and there are several reasons for that. Let's move down here. Gotta put my horn down carefully. All right, and bring the mic down with me. There we go. So, what we've got here in this pedal, if I go to the top, is this pickup kind of line of stuff here. What this does is, if I turn it on, I can switch between trying to make a single coil sound like a humbucker pickup and a humbucker pickup try to sound like a single coil. I don't need that. I don't have pickups on the sax. Wah, this is the wah pedal here. If I wanted to get that set up and use it, I'm not gonna do that right away. This is compression. Compression can do some nice things where it tries to make everything, it tries to squeeze everything into the same volume range. It's a really kind of finicky thing for a mic'd instrument like this. This would be it's really way more fruitful for a guitar where a signal is just going directly in there. Um, with a mic'd instrument, basically what it does is take away all the dynamics if you use those, and I don't want that, so I don't use compression. Uh, so I'll make sure that's off. Yeah, everything's off. Okay, distortion. So here we get into our first effect. I'm gonna turn this on, um, and show you what distortion can do. There are many types of distortion here. In fact, you can probably hear some of them sort of make some fuzzy noises there. Um, these are these are all kind of unique in their own way. They're literally distorting the sound that goes through. Some of them have, some of them don't have this rule, but usually they they don't leave the they don't do a blend of the distorted sound with the original sound. Um, it's usually just a distorted sound, and it puts the sound through a filter, and that's what it sounds like after it gets through there. It completely changes the sound. This is kind of what you think of with a rock and roll guitar going through distortion. I don't use this very much. This has a lot of options from scream there uh, to some overdrive that I can sort of dial down if I want to. And I'll just go through some of these and show you how they sound. So let's go. First, I'll play the original so you can hear the sax again with no effects, and then I'll start adding these. Okay, my apologies, I did that backwards and played with the distortion on first. So this was, let me just start from actually this overdrive, because this is going to be a good kind of foundation to what distortion can do. So classically, or kind of early on, what distortion was about was pushing the pushing the limits of how much a speaker or a signal could handle until it started to break up because it was overdriving a speaker or a tube or an amplifier. And a lot of them have, this one I like because it only has two options: how much drive and then a level afterwards. So this is going to be how much does it change the sound, and then this is going to be how loud is it afterwards. Since this effect changes the sound by cranking up the volume, this would effectively increase the volume. So then you would want to decrease the volume on this end so that when you turn this effect on, your sax isn't just wildly a lot louder than it was just a second ago. Caveat to that being, if you're using this effect just to play solos, then maybe you do want it to be a tiny bit louder. And in that case, you can leave the level up a little bit, but you don't want just a huge blasting difference between the two. All right, so I'll show this. I'll start, let's start with it halfway here. Actually, I'll start at 0 with the drive. And you'll hear it sounds very close to the original sound. So no drive at all. Sorry, no distortion at all. All right, and let's turn it on. Even though the drive is turned all the way down. Sounds a little bit quieter because we're not at the same volume here. The level isn't in the same place. So it's applying a little bit of overdrive. Let's do it with the level up. Okay, so you can hear a little bit of difference there. I'll start turning the drive up now, and I'll turn the level down when I need to, so it doesn't blast. Okay, let's get that turned off. So, what I hear that doing is, first of all, when I crank this up, it turns everything up, in like sensitivity. The mic picks up even soft sound. That's why I kind of did that dynamic thing at the end, because it makes everything louder, and then some of it caps out and gets really distorted. And that's one thing that another thing that overdrive does is it can kind of compress. It doesn't necessarily compress the signal from both sides, but it does kind of bring everything up until it reaches, it brings it closer to the ceiling where it starts to literally overdrive. A couple other options here. There are some other kinds of overdrive, and they all have their own distinct sort of sounds. You can hear their, it's even catching my voice. It's so sensitive right now. So let's do like grunge. I can even hear my voice getting distorted here. Let's check this out. Okay, so that's really, let's turn this mic off. So that's really changing the sound a whole lot. It's almost not recognizable as a saxophone. To me, it sounds more like a guitar, or almost like a synthesized sound. It doesn't sound like a saxophone anymore. All these other distortions, like there's kind of a death metal thing, there's a fuzz, yeah. They're all different kinds of distortion. And if that's something you're interested in, then it's a whole rabbit hole to go down on its own. I can't really describe those in depth for you because I haven't messed with them very much. Now, this pedal has this amplifier setting here. What this is meant to do is model or kind of replicate some iconic amplifiers from just over time in rock and roll and or all other genres, you know, any genres. It's got a bunch of different kinds in here, like a twin reverb. I don't know all of these. There's a so it's got some of its own little Digitech tone things, and then a direct amp. An amplifier literally amplifies the sound, and this is just modeling the sounds of different amplifiers. It's really hard to describe this because each amplifier has its own sound, and they do something different to the saxophone from what they do on guitar. There are a lot of these. You can select the amplifier and the cabinet that's going into the amplifier, which is just a whole, it's really its own huge set of sounds. I don't use any of those. Some of these amplifiers have distortion sound built into them, so it's a whole nother level of that, and overdrive and other kinds of EQ characteristics. Speaking of EQ, here's EQ. If I messed with this right now, it would do what it does, but it wouldn't make a huge difference here. I don't want to mess with the EQ of my saxophone because it's a sound that I've created for myself. I've spent time making it the way I want it to sound, so I don't want to mess with EQ to change it. Now, if I were playing with a group and I needed to brighten up my sound even more and make it even more edgy and present, I could use EQ to peak it in certain places or pull certain places out. So you could see I was able to adjust the bass, middle, and treble, just basic EQ knob ranges. I usually don't mess with that because you can do that at the, whoever's running sound can do that at the mixer. So I let them do it afterwards. Gate. A noise gate that decides how loudly you have to play for the pedal to let the sound through. So if I use a noise gate, let's see. If the microphone is picking up some of my talking, let's say. So let's say it's picking up some extra talking right here because I brought it up near my face. If I set the threshold higher, it'll stop picking up the talking and won't let anything through except the loudest sounds. So where overdrive was kind of like putting a ceiling on everything and pushing everything closer to the ceiling, a noise gate, because I said it kind of, the amplifier sort of has that, or compression. The noise gate raises the floor up, but it doesn't push everything up. It just leaves out everything that's below it. So then you have less of a chance of maybe tapping noise or unwanted noise getting through. But the thing you need to know is that once the gate opens, once something gets past, and this is short for threshold, once something gets past that threshold, it's on. Like it can be heard now. So if you're if you have a weird buzz coming through, let's say, and you want to get rid of that, okay, so you turn the threshold up. When you start playing and it opens up because you're playing louder now, you're going to hear the buzz underneath there. It's not going to cut that out. It's just going to leave it in the silence while you're not playing. One great thing you can do with a noise gate is, so here's the threshold. Here's how much sound it takes. If we look at this as a percentage, uh, then let's say it would have to be whatever 100% is. It would take between 99 and 100% to let the sound through. So it would have to be that sound level. So let's say 100 decibels or something. Then this would be 70. It has to be 70 decibels before it'll let it through. 50 decibels, and like that. What's really cool is you can use a noise gate to do interesting things. So let's say the gate opens once something 30 decibels or louder comes in. Okay, so the gate just goes boop, opens up and lets it through. Well, I can use the attack to decide how long that gate's going to take to open. So if it just opens immediately, that would be, and intuitively it's kind of backwards for me at least. 0 would be like 0 time, gates all the way open. That's how I have to think of it. 30 could be, it kind of swells open like that, slowly. And I'll mess with these settings and play too. Release does the same thing except on the other side. When you get done playing a note, it closes more slowly. That can be nice for if you have that kind of buzz or hum I was talking about, because it would be really noticeable if it were going like psh, and then all of a sudden it quit when you quit playing. This would kind of allow it to naturally decay off, and it might not be as noticeable to the audience then. So I'm going to mess with these settings. Let's turn everything down. Let's turn the threshold up a little bit. It's going to be hard to hear this because to hear the threshold make a difference, because it just won't play the sound if it's below a certain threshold. So you just won't be able to hear me play at all. So I'll mess with that a little bit just to show you, but then I'll mainly work with the attack and release. Okay, so hopefully you could hear that at a certain point that cut me off because I was playing too quietly. And then now I'll mess with the attack and release so you can hear what that does. I'm sure you saw a second ago when I switched it, when I went to the right here, it turned on this swell. And that's what this does. So I can create this sound with the noise gate just the way it is. So let me show you that. So threshold, and then I'm gonna increase the time it takes for the gate to open fully. So you can hear that um, creates this kind of swell into the note. So the next setting is named appropriately. If I go over here to swell, it'll sound, it's going to make that sound because sensitivity is basically another word for threshold. I think it's kind of intuitive there. Um, and in this one, the attack is turned all the way up. So let's see how long this swell takes. Okay, so um, I can't really demonstrate the release that well because I don't have other noise going on that the release would mess with. So this is gonna be the bulk of our time here. Effects. So we start with chorus. Chorus is a fantastic effect. Uh, Basically, the word says what it does because it tries to take one voice and turn it into a chorus of voices. Whether that voice is a guitar, a saxophone, whatever, that's what it does. It tries to make one sound like multiple. So what it does is it takes a signal in, it splits it up, it leaves one signal normal, but the other signal it messes with, and then it puts them back together at the end. And the settings after the chorus here just basically determine how much it messes with the second signal before it puts them back together, or how different from the first signal the second signal is. So for this chorus, we've got speed and depth, and then we've got level. This is something that many choruses do. They pitch modulate the sound, so they basically make it do vibrato. And then this adjusts the speed at which it does that. Depth. So vibrato is an adjusting of pitch vertically, right? Making it flat or sharp around the center note that you're playing. Depth decides how far away from the original note it's going to get. Level is going to be how loud that affected signal is. So the second signal, how loud that's going to be once the two are combined. If I turn that all the way down, it's just me playing saxophone. So let's set these to kind of halfway for this pedal. And the level at 0, and I'll slowly bring the effect in. Okay, so hopefully you can hear that really added another tone in there. Even with just a little bit, it makes it really obvious that there's another saxophone going through here. And that's what I mean when I say it splits it doubles the signal up, it messes with one of them and then puts them back together. So now we've got the level at 50, which is just kind of an arbitrary number. It's not like it's 50% as loud as the original signal um, necessarily. It's just whatever 50 loud is for that pedal that you're messing with. But let's start messing with the split signal. Let's mess with how fast it does the vibrato. Now for me, that starts to get pretty almost disorienting. You can definitely hear a pulse up here. I start to hear one maybe around 70 or so. Even as low as 50, if I play a long note, I can hear a pulse. Um, when I get down here, it starts to get way more subtle. Um, and it doesn't pulse nearly as much. It sounds a little more, um, I don't know, just kind of like generally acceptable. It doesn't sound as harsh, I guess I could say. So let's see what happens if I mess with the depth here. Let's turn the depth down to about a quarter of the way, and then let's adjust the speed. So we got a quarter of the way here, 0 speed, which doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to move. It means it's going to move as slowly as this pedal is going to move it. So to me, that makes having the depth lowered makes all of these less intense. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. That's exactly what it means. So just perfect. Like, great, it's doing its job. Even when it's going faster here, I can still hear a pulse, but it's not as deep. So let's go back. Let's go about halfway now that you can see what those do kind of combined. Let's crank this depth up to 3/4 of the way. And then I'll mess with the speed again. I'll go ahead and start it halfway. So I kind of find a sweet spot in here with a low speed and a little more depth. Just because if it's any more subtle than probably about 50, just on this specific one, it's harder to hear a difference out in a crowd with other stuff going on. I don't like the speed to be high because once I do that, it starts to feel like it's setting a tempo. It's subdividing a tempo. And then I left the level alone here, but you could just mess with that endlessly as well, how loud the second signal is. So let's move on. Just to show, here is another chorus. It has a speed and a depth, but no level adjustment. So this speed and depth, so let's go to this one here. I had it at 20 and 70, and then let's go back down to 50 like it was, and then we'll go to the other one. Okay, so that you can just get a taste for how different choruses. Here's another chorus even. It has speed, depth, and level, same settings. If we set that to almost the same things, I'll even go with 50. You can hear that sound. That's going to sound slightly different. Okay, so that's just an example of how different pedals could possibly sound a little bit different. I don't think they sounded incredibly different from each other. There's more difference on one pedal if you adjust these settings than there is between all the different pedals that try to make the same effect happen, at least to my ears. Okay, Flanger is a weird one. So we've got, let me go to I think there's another one. Yeah. And I can't remember what REG does. I think that's short for register. But Flanger is going to, where the chorus added that, combined the effects back together, I think Flanger doesn't necessarily, I mean, I think there are certainly ones that can do that have like a mix knob. But Flanger also goes through an EQ sweep. I'm pretty sure, or at least this one does. And it might even do vibrato as well. It's kind of its own sound. Let's just play around with it. But we can see we've got speed, depth, so very much like the chorus settings. Even this other one has speed and width, which kind of means the same as depth in this case. And the REG, I'll have to mess with that a little bit. Maybe I'll remember what that specifically means. So yeah, what you're hearing is, if you could imagine an EQ line being flat, the flanger is taking a point and moving it left and right across that EQ line, peaking certain spots of the EQ. So I adjusted the speed there to make it a little easier to hear. Width, and depth are going to affect how far left and right or up and down the EQ it's going to sweep. So I'll show you that. So I hear kind of a similar thing as chorus going on here, where there are two signals going back and forth, and every now and then during the flanger kind of sweep, they bump into it. They really rub up against each other, and I could kind of hear that. I am not great at describing this one because I don't mess with it very much. I think of it as very related to chorus. I'm not 100% sure how it's different, but what I mainly want to show you is what it sounds like, and you can sort of decide where to move from there. So phaser, this is really similar. You can see it has similar settings: speed, depth, and I think register, or like kind of where in the range it's going to sweep, and then depth and speed. So let's mess with that, and you can hear that. So yeah, I hear a very similar thing to the flanger there, where it's doing an EQ sweep, and register moves around where on the EQ it sweeps back and forth. Depth is how big or how wide that sweep is, and then speed is how fast it is. Now vibrato is gonna do what the chorus was doing to that second affected sound, except it's going to leave out the first unaffected sound, and it's just going to wiggle the signal up and down a little bit, and this decides how fast and how deep. I don't use this because as a sax player, I do this on my own. Um, so having a pedal do it is kind of weird for me. So you can see the depth there. You can hear that getting pretty wide. Rotary. This is kind of a difficult one to describe. This is based off an old rotary speaker in a Leslie in a speaker box that came with is a really popular organ sound, and it's a speaker or a horn that spins around inside there that creates this well, sort of Doppler effect with the sound, where it creates this cool stereo back and forth image, but also sends sound waves bouncing around in a weird way that some of them are coming at you faster than some of the others, so it makes the pitch kind of wobbly. Vibe pan is probably a vibrato panning is probably a good way to kind of sum that up, because it's making the sound have this kind of vibrato, and then it's also making it change left, right, left, right, left, right. But I'm not outputting in stereo, so that's the panning part is not going to really come across. So it's not going to sound as good as it could on here. But I'll go ahead and play it for you just so you can hear how it sounds a little different from just a vibrato place. So this is speed, intensity, and Doppler. And then if I go to vibe pan, speed, depth, which is almost the same thing as intensity, and then vibe, that might be close to the same thing as Doppler. A lot of these, there are many pedals that emulate a Leslie or a Rotary, and a lot of them have very similar settings to each other, just like the choruses before. So what I hear that doing is the speed is adjusting how fast that speaker or horn is spinning. The intensity on this one is adjusting how much it's kind of adjusting the volume up and down, and it's adjusting the intensity of that, the volume difference between when the horn is facing away from you and when the horn is facing towards you in its rotation. And then the Doppler is kind of simulating it by adding vibrato to one or multiple of the signals. It's kind of splitting the signal up and splicing it back together like the chorus did. and it's just increasing the intensity of that vibrato on one or more of the signals. Vibe pan is going to be the same exact thing. So this one literally says vibrato. All right, tremolo. Tremolo is kind of a unique one. And I think I should just play it for you because it's somewhere in between like a vibrato and a flanger, I think. Well, I don't think it actually flanges, but it's kind of like, or sorry, I don't think it actually does vibrato, but I think it's more like a flanger. It kind of sweeps another kind of EQ setting, but then you can adjust the shape of it on here. And I think you'll be able to hear the difference between these two. So let me just go ahead and play it for you. It's a hard one to describe, for me anyway, because I'm not super familiar with it. Okay, so yeah, I think I was actually wrong about the EQ sweeping on this. Sorry. This actually is changing the volume. Tremolo is. So if you were doing this on a violin, on a bowed stringed instrument, you'd be bowing back and forth really quickly, but on the same note. And so you'd have little gaps where the bow isn't moving across the string, that it's not making sound. And then this kind of adjusts how much of a difference there is, how much of a blend there is between when you're making sound and then when it's at zero. So you could see square was like the volume is just going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down with almost no fade. Sine was a little smoother, and then triangle was like super smooth. All right. Now, panner. This one, so it's got these settings again. Right? I'm on the panner? Okay, it's got these settings again. And, except this one, instead of being tremolo messing with the volume, this would mess with the stereo picture of the sound and switch it between left and right speakers. Like I said, I'm not in stereo right now, and so this is kind of a fun opportunity to show that, because the panner shouldn't do anything because I'm only sending out one signal. So I'll even make it square so it'll make the most difference possible. So that's just no change to the signal because there isn't a left and right channel for it to send it back and forth between left and right. But that's what a panner does. So it would basically tremolo each speaker, but when the left one is up, the right one would be down, and vice versa. And then these are going to adjust how much of a blend there is. So at triangle, when the left one comes down to 90, the right one's going to start going up to 10, and they're going to blend slowly into each other. Square, one's going to go to 0 and the other one's going to go to 100, and it's going to flip back and forth very harshly. Now, envelope filter. This is an interesting one to explain. So earlier, a noise gate I said, senses the volume of the sound going in, and if it's not above a certain amount, it doesn't let anything in. It only lets it in above that amount. An envelope filter, if you imagine an envelope only being so big, it can only hold so much. If you put more than that in it, it spills out. That's kind of why I think the name is what it is. But how I think of it is it's kind of like a noise gate, except in the opposite direction. So it lets things in that are so quiet, it kind of, instead of just turning them off so they don't make any sound, it puts them in a certain, it takes a lot of the highs off of them, basically. And then once they're over that line, it adds a bunch of that high back. So it's as if there were a noise gate, but only on part of the EQ. So I'll show you what that sounds like. I have to turn the sensitivity down quite a bit for it to work on saxophone. So the sensitivity is when the envelope opens. So that's how, basically how low the noise gate floor is until it starts to open up the EQ. Then range is going to be how far from opening up to all the way open is there. It can also be how low the low EQ is while it's under that threshold, and then how high it goes when it's above that threshold. Kind of similar things, but not exactly the same. And then this over here is actually the right end of a Electro-Harmonix Qtron Plus, which is a dedicated envelope filter. It just has many more controls. That's why I have a dedicated one just for that. But this is an okay simulation of what the basic functions of an envelope filter. So let's check it out. By the way, this is definitely my favorite effect to use on the sax. Okay, you can probably tell it's my favorite because I spent a bunch of time with it. So the sensitivity, I didn't mess with that very much because that literally decides where um, in the volume range the filter is going to react. So once you get that set, for saxophone, what it's going to mean is your articulation is going to decide. I like to get it set right on the edge of where when I articulate pretty hard, it opens up and reacts. But then during the length of a note, it's not as open. And that's what gives it that kind of funk, kind of whap, 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 like the bass line on Chameleon. Um, wow, 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 wow. You know. So anyway, auto ya. So auto ya is going to do the same thing, except instead of caring how loud I play, it's not even going to worry about that. It's just going to do the same thing the envelope filter did, but it's time based instead of articulation or volume based. So it's just going to do it. You can see I can adjust the speed here. That's how fast it's going to go no matter what I do. Then the intensity is going to be the how high the spike is that goes up and down the EQ range. And then range is going to be either where that spike kind of sits, whether it sits higher up or lower down, or how wide the sweep is. It's kind of hard to tell without messing with it. And I haven't messed with this very much, so but that's what range can possibly mean. Let's mess with it. Okay, I think that's about as much as I can show off with that effect. Ya ya is sort of the same thing, but you're picking a range to stay in. Let's mess with that. Now I'll show you what I mean. So it's literally what this auto yaw was doing, except it's manual. So I have to adjust the so pedal is actually based on what this wah pedal sort of does, and I can tie this value to this. That's kind of another thing that's going to come up. So and then intensity is how high that spike is in the EQ, and then range is here it's kind of the left and right or up and down bounds of where this pedal is going to sweep, and it's just moving that along. What I noticed about these two, actually, I wanted to mention is that the higher the number, actually, it sounded like the lower in the EQ it got as opposed to higher, which was counterintuitive to me. So we've got a step filter then. We've got some intensity and speed. Let's hear this one. So this is basically doing what the auto yaw was doing, except it's bouncing around different parts of the EQ spectrum instead of sweeping through it from one side to the other. It's skipping around instead of doing it sequentially. Okay, then we get a whammy. Now this one, you have to, oh wait, did I go to whammy? Yeah. So this decides this does a lot of stuff. So this is as if you had a whammy. You can hear it. I can hear it affecting my voice. It's picking that up. If you had a whammy pedal and you left it in one place, and then these start to do different things, but it's kind of an interesting way. It's kind of like the auto yaw and the yaw did. It's messing with the pitch and just like leaving it there. So I'll show you. Okay, that's a little, I know that's a little like, I don't know, it's a little much to deal with, but basically the, this decides what the whammy pedal does. This is the percentage of pedal applied. So this would be with the, as if the pedal was all the way up, or we would call that heel down, or yeah, completely heel down or toe up. And then if we put it at 99, then it's completely toe down. On this pedal, you can set the whammy to control this parameter so that you can adjust it with your foot on the fly. All right, and then it does all these things. Like this one, it went between a minor third and a major third. Here it went between a second and a major third. And then this is going to adjust the blend between your original signal and the affected signal. All right, then we get a pitch shift. This is half steps. If I set this to 12, I'm going to get an octave below. 24, I'm going to get 2 octaves below. It just leaves it at that pitch, and you can set it to completely that altered signal, or you can combine it with your original signal. This is nice if you just want to, it's kind of like a harmonizer, except it just stays with you in semitones no matter what. So, for instance, this. Okay, so I think you can kind of get, these are in half steps, so I could keep it a half step away and keep that mix 50-50, and let's see how agonizing that sounds. Back to the days of playing in beginning band. So yeah, that's what this does, and this one happens to go 2 octaves in either direction and has this kind of blend or mix knob. Detune. These are smaller steps. It's basically the same as the pitch adjustment. I'll just show you. So from 0, and I'll So yeah, on this pedal, that's meant to contain all the steps in between a half step. All right, harmony. You've got basically what it says: third down, second down, fourth, fifth, octave. Then you decide what key, and then you can decide what mode here. That just creates harmony. This pedal does not analyze any chords. It doesn't have an input to analyze chords and play according to that specific harmony. It's just going to stay a static interval away from your original tone. All right. Now delay. This is one I like to mess with. Delay takes your signal. It lets your original signal through. Then it delays it and sends it through again, but quieter. And I'm saying it that way on purpose because that's how you know what all these parameters do. So 350 milliseconds, that's how long it's going to wait to send your signal back, but quieter. and in between every time after that. Okay, so 350 milliseconds. Repeat. That's how many times it's going to send your signal back out. Quieter, quieter every time, and after 350 milliseconds each. Level. That's how loud it's going to be sending your signal back. So if it does it 20 times every 350 milliseconds, if I go down to like 50%, you probably won't hear the last 10 of these 20 very much. They'll be really, really faint. But if I turn it up all the way, they're going to start to be almost equal to the volume of the original sound. So I'll show you what happens if I turn this up really long. This starts to be seconds long. And it'll just play back the note I play after 1 second. So there you can hear that even with the, I'll turn that mic off so it doesn't do that. Even with the level all the way up, its goal is to put out 5 repeats and have the 5th one be at 0. So right now you're not hearing the last 2 or 3. If I set it to more repeats, you're going to hear more of them before it gets to 0. So at 20, you probably hear 10 of them. I'm going to turn the time down a little bit because that'll take a long time. So let's cut that time in half. Let's do quadruple the number of repeats and leave the level all the way up. Oh, sorry about that. Just moved the screen all around on you. So one thing I notice about the signal I'm hearing is, and this is an effect of this specific kind of delay, the longer it goes, I could kind of hear it getting degraded a little bit. Hear it getting worse in quality. That's a property of an analog delay, which is what that stands for. If we switch over to a digital delay, it's going to be more like a digital reproduction of that signal over and over again. And it's not going to lose as much quality no matter how many times it repeats. So let's hear that. So what I hear there is the repeats sounding much closer to the original tone of my sax. They're just the volume. It's just the volume is getting lowered, and that's it. All right, a mod delay. Mod delay is going to affect the repeated signal with some modulation. I'll just play that for you because modulation can be different from pedal to pedal. And you kind of have to hear how each one affects the signal when it repeats. So here's what this one sounds like. So this one's not modulating it a whole lot. Then we get I believe this is a ping delay. I'm not too sure about this one, actually. Let's just mess around with it and see what happens. Okay, so what happens? What happens with this delay is, even though it's set at the same amount of time as the other ones, it's going to bounce that signal back and forth as if it were bouncing between two left and right wall while it's delaying. So it's going to sound like it's happening twice as fast. And I think this also, if it were in stereo, I think it would also modulate back and forth between the stereo channels, which you're not going to be able to hear now because it's in mono. Tap delay. For tap delay, you can use a pedal to tap a certain tempo, and it'll be just whatever tempo that you tap. But other than that, it should sound just like any other delay. I think this one is a digital tap delay. Okay, I was wrong about that part. It sounds more analog. So even though it's a tap delay, you can get into different types of you can get into kind of a subcategory situation. So if you want a tap delay, you need to find out if it's an analog tap delay, a digital delay. Oh my gosh, you know what? I'm actually being so dumb right now. This is short for tape delay. I'm so sorry. A lot of delays have a tap. Oh my gosh. A tap feature where you can tap a tempo to tell the delay how long to last. Okay, so let me totally unmake a fool of myself here. What a tape delay does is, if you imagine a tape recorder with a sound on it, and then something, a magnetic tape recorder recorded that sound again. A thing about tape is that it degrades over time. That signal kind of gets stretched and modulated a little bit. I'm going to turn the number of repeats up so you can hear what that sounds like, and then I'm going to go back to the analog delay, put it on the same settings so you can hear the difference between these two. But it's kind of like an analog delay with a different sort of feeling. So analog and tape delay are actually pretty similar. And of course, if you got a tape delay pedal, it might have a slightly different tape effect applied to the delay. And like I said before, you can dive way deeper into these than I am now, because these are just kind of a basic replica of those effects. Now, reverb. Reverb is something I don't really like to get into because you're combining. What I think of reverb is that it's basically a delay and kind of a modulation effect combined. So if you have, so this one even doesn't say doesn't even say what it's supposed to emulate, um, besides the kind of reverb that was on an old amp. I think they still make these. A Twin RV is an amp with a reverb setting that it's just like, here's, it sounds like that amp used to sound. Um, the Lex, I can't remember what that what that is short for, but it's the company that makes these sound. But this is supposed to be ambient, studio, room, hall. This is supposed to be an empty plate. Um, the EMT actually might stand for something else, but this is supposed to be a plate reverb. And I'll explain some of these. So the Twin RV is hard to explain. You just have to hear how it sounds. I'll go ahead and play it for you. Might as well. The parameters usually can't adjust much except for the on this one, except for the reverb, because I believe that's all there was on this amp was just do you want reverb? How much? And here's what it sounds like. So I'll just set it to halfway and you can hear it. Okay, so that one, you can make a pretty big sound out of that one, and it has its own unique character just because it's modeled after this amp that had that in it. You know, it doesn't. It's kind of hard to describe. It sounds like it sounds. So let's go to some other ones. So ambient reverb. Now here we've got some parameters to adjust. The level, just like we had in the last one, so that's nice. Then I think this is live, like liveliness, and this is decay. So what these usually are is decay is going to be, it's almost like the number of repeats from the delay pedal settings, but it's also kind of like it's also kind of a speed maybe. It sort of depends on the pedal, but this is kind of how quickly it's going to decay. This is how intense that reverb is going to sound. So I don't know, it's hard to describe because you would think it would be the same as level, but it's really more of a blend knob. How much the reverb is going to be is going to take your original sound in. So I'll mess with a couple of these just to show you some differences. These are an okay representation of what these types of reverb sound like. So ambient, hall, room, studio, all that. Okay, so sorry about the camera knock there. So you can kind of see that, or hear, I guess. I just adjusted the parameters on that last one so you could sort of hear what they do, what I was talking about there. So, plate reverb is a little different. This one's a little special because it's not. I mean, it is emulating an actual reverb sound, but this one's not emulating a place sound. This is when reverb was kind of earlier invented, and I can't believe I didn't find a spring. I thought there was a spring reverb on here too, but this is if you took your sound source and then plugged it straight in. So you split it in two. You plugged one in straight through so that it goes through. You took the other end and you hooked the wire on one end of an empty plate and then hooked the other wire, I think, on the same kind of corner. So the sound would go out and then come back around and then go through after your original sound. It's kind of a unique sounding reverb. I just wanted to say that about this one because plate reverb is its own sound. Halls can be all kind of sizes and have their own characteristics. So you can't, I mean, hall reverb is going to be kind of a big, no matter what company is simulating it, really. I mean, most likely. But they're going to have slightly different characteristics between all of them. Same with like room, studio, ambient, or ambient. Twin RV is its own specific sound for the most part. And plate's going to be similar between pedals. If it's emulating a plate reverb, this is what it's trying to sound like. So let's hear that. Okay, so that's sort of its own sound that other pedals doing the same, using the same term, are kind of trying to shoot for. So it kind of sounds a little crystal-y to me. So, and anyway, that's just kind of its own sound. Now this pedal has an expression pedal. And that's what this is about. That's what the EXP is for. And that lets you set this expression pedal to some of these parameters from the effects. And that allows you to adjust those parameters on the fly if you'd like to. This pedal has a drum machine in it that has some basic beats, and then that's it. That's it. Those are all the basic level effects that you have. So there are some other more unique things, more unique sounds you can achieve, and I encourage you to kind of branch out and find what there is out there and see if you can apply it. I like to affect the saxophone sound in a I like to be judicious about the effects I'm going to apply, in that I don't want to strip the natural sound of the saxophone just completely away. That would be kind of like a synthesizer pedal that takes in what you're playing and just completely changes the sound, or like some of those distortions from earlier that you can't even tell it's a saxophone anymore. The only way I've enjoyed that kind of sound is with the envelope filter, which really kind of makes it not sound like so much of a saxophone anymore. That's the only one like that I like. So I may do this again later, go through my other pedals I have that are more specific to sounds. Like I've got this Boost Killer by Donner here. I've got this Qtron Plus by Electro Harmonics. A couple delays and a Super Chorus by Boss, but I'm about to be changing that actually, and getting a different pedal. So I actually won't have some of these for much longer, but and I'm excited to share that change when it comes. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you liked it, let me know. If you hated it, let me know. If I was wrong about the description on some of these pedals, I'm really sorry. And also let me know, and I will probably reply that I'm really very sorry for messing that up. But please correct me so that people can see the correct info down below in some comments. And I might even turn it into a note that comes on the screen during that effect. So, alright, I'll see you next time.